boost ignition and liftoff. All systems are go.
Welcome to the Lesbo and the Bean universe. Lesbo and the Bean. LATB, Lat B, where mixed martial arts and the UFC get silly. Big silly. Buckle up and move your tray tables to their upright position. And please, somebody shut that baby up. It's time for Lesbo and the Bean.
Welcome back. Episode 196. We got a pay-per-view finally upon us, and oh man, this is one of the most stacked pay-per-views we've had in a long time. Before we get to all that, how have you been, Lesbo? How's the Twitterverse treating you lately?
I think the hottest thing going on right now is the TJ Dillashaw shit. Well, boy, was I wrong about my boy TJ. This is what I feel about TJ Dillashaw. I was literally I bought the very last seat on the train to the T. Everybody else had already been on it when it was on.
The Bean,
and then the train's like going off a cliff and everybody else is long off. Last person still on the train. First on, first off rules with TJ. So, yeah, I guess the EPO thing is...
I just want to say, am I one of the few people that regularly talks about EPO? Because most of the time people are like steroids, Tyrannobol, like big muscle builders, and I'm like, the real abuse is in the EPOs, guys. The real abuse, the one that everyone's like, oh, it's that cardio. When you can go 8 rounds and not fucking lose a beat, you're gonna beat some people.
Especially when you're one of the guys that's known for your cardio. When you're like TJ Dillashaw,
$1,000,000%
type dude. And yeah, that's what, for those not in the know, the EPO is kind of like, for those silly people who actually get their MMA news from us. The EPO is the stuff that, is that what Lance Armstrong got in trouble for?
And
like
Chael Sonnen.
And the cyclists, though, it ups cardio.
All of the cyclists. Correct. That's correct. That's one of the main ones. There's even myths or legend of cyclists having to wake up at 12 or 1 a.m. on cycling days and actually have to cycle because their blood's so thick that it'll actually cause cardiac arrest while they're sleeping. So they have to schedule those into their training. And you'll hear every trailer supposedly at night, them spinning inside their trailers. All of them, though. Why? Because everybody's on steroids. Everybody.
And it actually oxygenates their blood to a super format, and everything that TJ talks about, even in his training, is that kind of, he seems like, doesn't he seem like a Lance Armstrong type?
1,000,000%, but what you're telling me is that on it doesn't work. You are lying. On it works. On it works.
They said this is a brand new test that has just come out, so they can test for this EPO now, and immediately TJ seemed to know what he was busted for.
Yeah, he's like, I'm out.
For it. Immediately, here's the belt, you guys, and I'll see you in a year. 2 years. So, I now, because Henry Cejudo and what's that, Cody Garbrandt, everyone's talking shit. So now they're starting to test TJ's supplements back, because this isn't a test they do on all the supplements. This is something now that has been created that they're pulling on random ones. So this is something that they potentially, now that they have this new test for it,
sure,
now they can test back. And Cody Garbrandt saying he's never lost to somebody who wasn't on steroids.
Interesting. Very interesting, because that's a very select few bit of people that have been able to do that.
And you've given him credit over and over again for being like, you even said it when TJ got busted this last time. Like, Cody's been telling y'all, he taught all the alpha male how to use EPO. And he actually specifically says EPO. In the
exactly.
interviews. So
interesting.
And what's alpha
crumbles.
male known for? Their cardio. And we've been talking about a camp that's shot down, a camp that's not there anymore, a camp that we think might be alpha male.
Chad Mendes off of the juice, came back and retired his first fight back.
No, second. He did come out.
Oh,
his first
true.
fight.
You're right.
You
know your Chad Mendes.
He was my last alpha male guy I was on board with, and once he retired, I retired.
Alpha male. You're alpha male.
Like, all right, alpha male. So yeah, I've been super heavy into that, and I like Luke Thomas does like a 20 or 30 minute on it. And I like his, and I think it might be off of not the MMA fighting. You know how he had his old show before?
Right.
It's something separate than that. So if you're looking for something, it was educating on it. without talking shit. Like, I want to know about the whole thing. Now, second question. Does TJ have a career anymore? He's 33 years old right now, and he's retired, like 2 years off, 2 years suspended.
I do think that more than likely, if he comes back, it's not going to be in for a title run. He might stick around the division and still beat a lot of the young guys, but our sport, like Lat B, is constantly evolving. In 2 years, I mean, you can be on buffer radio, getting all the way to the big top, getting all the way onto finally Instagram and Twitter and all that mess, getting a new studio. I think that it's too long to stay away from the game. Here, we couldn't stay away for 2 years, come back into it. Again, he'll train, but there's nothing like in-cage time. So I do think that this might be his little back step out, or if he comes back, it'll be more of a tarnish on his legacy instead of a bright spot. More kind of like Chad Mendes. He'll get a win or two.
He's rinsed. Like, he's no longer in talks for the GOAT, no longer in talks. Like, he's rinsed. Like, he loses all
asterisks. He's Barry Bonds.
Yeah, there goes. Another one bites the dust.
Another one. It's not just him, so it's kind of a steady theme. The only ones I personally feel like has not been on steroids, and I totally could be wrong, DJ. He's the only one I feel like didn't ever look like he was on steroids. Had crazy cardio, though.
The Diaz brothers? They
True.
have bodies like guys that
True, I would agree.
Kind of cross-country triathlon shit.
They're probably not on steroids.
And they talk shit about it like guys who don't do wacky shit.
Right, and they'll tell you, I'll pop on weed all day, every day. Like, they'll tell you. Which did you see Henry Cejudo taking a hit all over Mike Tyson's?
I didn't get to watch it. I saw the picture, though. I just saw the way he was holding it. Holding the little rolled up.
The roach?
Yeah, the little joint or whatever. So it was kind of...
So, had he done it before? Did he inhale? Henry Cejudo.
Do you think he has?
I think he has, because there was a bit of technique. It wasn't improper. It was just very like Southern California Cholo style to me. It looked like an old Cholo taught him, like, you grab it like this in case the cops are coming.
You put it in your hand.
And then you can tick it behind your hand and no one says shit. Like, that's the kind of what I saw, but it was awkward. It just was like, you're talking to someone. Why would you put your hand in front of your face like that? So that's what I saw. That's my breakdown.
That's your breakdown. I'll have to watch it and get back to you.
The Cholo-ness of Cejudo coming through. You know, he's got a Latino family. Family.
True. So what else is happening?
There's always Khabib Conor talk. I feel like that Lobov Jason Knight fight is still ready, fresh in everyone's ears, but everyone's ready to move on to this pay-per-view. Other biggest news? I don't really have none. There's been more fights.
It's really just been the TJ stuff as far as I know. And then other than that, everything's been about the...
Actually, late breaking.
Co-main and main.
Late breaking. BJ Penn officially cited for domestic abuse. He has a restraining order.
What?
From his wife. I haven't seen the exact details, but I do know that there has already been a few sources. This is probably an hour and a half, 2 hours ago now.
What is happening with the men out in Hawaii?
I can't, no comment.
I just meant Rachel Ostovich's whole problem and stuff.
I think of Travis Brown just beating up that guy who jumped into that ring. Who was a amateur MMA fighter, by the way, which I found out. The guy who tackled Bret Hart. So I find it interesting. A lot of people have started to ask, and here you were one of the first saying it was a work from the beginning. I didn't think so. I thought it was a shoot. More people are starting to be on board with Lesbo here as far as what you saw. I was really surprised at how many people think that was a work.
It's a work if Travis Brown walks into wrestling and this starts being his thing.
Which we were both talking about. That way, right. He needs to. Interesting how I saw other media sources, MMA media sources, saying the same thing. Like, hey, Travis Brown's about to be in WWE. He fits the part. He's a giant. Like, make him a Hawaiian badass done. Like, you don't need to write nothing. It's there. Same with Ronda. You didn't need to write her a character. Travis has that same background.
That's so true. And
like, they're MMA fighters. Okay, go with it.
Do you think part of this was done, because Ronda lost to the man. Do you think part of it was done to lighten, like, try to get her come back and be a graceful loser so the MMA fans can quell their fire? Because she burnt us.
That's not enough for me. It ain't enough for me. Botching a pin, which I don't even know enough about it, but it didn't look like her shoulders flat by any means. So botching the finishing move for the main event, I mean, that's probably as deep as I'm going to get into WWE for another 5 or 9 years.
I did not mean the
I
fight
don't
at
care.
all. I did not want to break down of the fight at all. I didn't watch a thing. I just meant the whole thing is a soap opera.
Truth.
So they set up Ronda to lose.
It's not going to work for me.
Just so, in my opinion, like, she comes and she's a really gracious loser, and it makes everybody...
She redeems herself finally.
Yeah, like, there's a part with the MMA fans.
I don't think it happens.
You know what,
I don't
everyone?
think it happens.
There you go. At least it wasn't Connor Ronda talk. We just TJ Ronda talk. But we did WWE.
The casual section of the podcast.
I was judging other podcasts for WWE last week.
Interesting. And here I feel like it's a topic we have.
I know, in my head.
Regularly.
But I feel like we're jokey. Like, we're dumb. Not like we're dumb, but we're not like Luke Thomas you go to, and he talks about any one subject for a minute, and he has tape footage where he pauses it and does all, like, you know, he's going from DC to New York. Like, he's doing all this next level. Like, we're like D or C list. Like, we're not quite
aiming high.
if like it was fame, well, maybe we'll get there. But
we're getting
if like in the world of MMA media, we are like the Big Brother of MMA podcasts, or like the Bachelorette. Like, it would be that level of reality television. Survivor. Like,
I thought we would be like the Housewives of Atlanta sisters.
Same.
Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, like 5 removed.
We're something on like Bravo late night or VH1.
Bravo Plus on demand. I don't even know if they have that, but
like, you know, if Luke and Ariel and Chael and Big Brown, if these guys are like sitting up there, Joe Rogan obviously is like Princess Diana.
But what, Joe Rogan's like on A-list now, is he not? He's made it to A-list. AA-list levels.
Yeah, of celebrity, but then I feel like of MMA media as well.
He's gold star territory.
Top tier.
He's gold
MMA
star.
Media. So crazy. We live in a crazy world. But that is another reason where I think they're losing out a little bit on Joe Rogan's star power, I think. I think they're being silly.
I think Joe is starting to understand what his worth and influences, and he's starting to be a little expensive because he's making a lot of money on it. So you gotta be able to make it worth his time.
And that podcast.
That podcast
is...
And those JRE clips, which he monetizes all separately by 10 different channels.
Anyway, so I don't mean to say we're dumb. We love that you're here.
Thank you very much.
We just try to be silly and corny and like
Agreed.
Not take ourselves too seriously.
100%. Which, if you haven't heard, we're going to be making it a little more palatable for everyone. I feel like there is obviously changes on the horizon if you haven't been seeing desks moving around constantly. Nothing has been set in stone. But one thing that we do have to finally get to, UFC 236, a rematch at 155 pounds from 145 pounds. This is going to be a star-studded event. I mean, this is one of the most fun cards I've seen in a long time, and we came off of a long streak there, but this pay-per-view's bringing it. I feel like there might be 1 or 2 stayaways on the entire night, but I got finishes left and right, underdogs for days. If you listen to that, you're making money. That's going to be a guarantee this coming up weekend.
Oh, a guarantee?
Woo! Yeah. All right, you're making me back stuff. You gotta pump that.
Let's see. Let's get into it.
We gotta get into it. It is gonna be a 13-card event, starting off with 135 pounds with debuting Randy Costa, El Zohan himself, against Brandon Davis. Davis being a long-tenured UFC fighter, 9-6. He's coming off of a 2-fight losing streak to Enrique Barzola's decision, also losing to Zabit Magomed Sharipov via Nibar Berzuliev stretch. It was Lesbo's submission of the year, so we haven't seen him since then, but Davis, being the head striking coach for Alan Belcher's team, likes to get his Muay Thai going in there. On the ground, he's proficient, obviously, against Zabit level of ground game and wrestling. It was he was being able to be exploited. But Zohan here hasn't really shown us that. I mean, Brandon Davis has been training at top level and had decision with Barzola, and also gotten a couple UFC wins against Steve Peterson and losing to Bochniak in a decision. But we've just seen a lot more tape from Davis, and he's really starting to slow it down, come into his own, and he has a lot of veteranship, even though he's still young in his career at 28 years old. I do think that eventually that's going to play a role, just because those bright lights do shine very brightly. And Luozon, teammate, perfect 4-0 as a professional. He started fighting last year in 2018, has got 4 knockouts in a row. He is the Zohan, throws kicks from every single angle, but he only fought one guy with a winning record. Most of the guys he's beaten are 0-0, 0-1-2, 0-2. I mean, it's crazy low level, and I feel like Joe Lozon's credentials and coaching and his ties with Dana White kind of got Zohan here. He did what he was supposed to do by finishing these barely professional level fighters on losing records. He finished them. Actually, the toughest fight Zohan had was his debut as a professional, and the guy took him down. He was a little ball of muscle, looked like a wrestler, ate a couple of those kicks, and ended up getting early stoppage. But since then, Zohan ran through everyone, and it was mainly with these kicks against guys who just looked fairly tentative and scared in there. Zohan comes out, and in 3 of his fights that I saw, because they were all in 30 seconds, he threw a question mark kick. But he throws them from both sides, and he'll throw a question mark kick with his left, land on his right foot, and then throw that right, and it catches guys off guard. It catches them quick. But against the Brandon Davis level of fighter, he can eat a couple of those kicks. They might compromise him, but he'll be able to gather himself, keep moving forward. So I do expect him to eat a couple shots. But so far, I feel like I've seen harder shots landed on Davis and him being able to move through those well. So I do think that the further this fight gets, the easier it gets for Brandon Davis. And I actually have a TKO round number 3. There's a lot of hype on Zohan. There's a lot of gym talk, but this is the big show. This is the big game. It's different nowadays. And I got TKO round number 3, Davis. I think Zohan just doesn't have a gas tank for it, because there's been nothing that have told me he does. Who do you have in this fight, and why? First one of the night.
I do think that Randy Costa is from the right camp, that they do understand what he's getting into, and he might be able to go far in the UFC, but I can just tell that he hasn't fought anyone with a winning record in over 4 years. So Brandon Davis, we always talk about it, that UFC experience. Now the battle is, I stick with what I know easily with Brandon Davis. That's a rule here for me. But then also, I got to stay away from the first and the fight of the night. For some reason in my head, do I want to put my money on Brandon Davis? Is he a guy that's fighting for his slot right now in the UFC? Or is he a guy that always goes and gives an action-packed fight, will get in a throwdown, so they're excited about it, and he just goes out there and is a punching bag and lets a guy do what he wants to do? I can't understand why some guys coming in on a losing record or fighting guys with a losing record into the UFC like this.
There was favors pulled here.
Yeah, it's a gym push for some reason.
It's a Lozon push, because he just retired, and it's like,
I got Davis decision because I wonder about the power in his hands with everyone, and that's why they put him in with all these gym favorites. That's who he seems to fight, and then these guys make a name off of him, like Zabit and whatever. But he's a warrior, and he goes in there to throw away, or swing away. So it makes me wonder if some guy who is a specialist is going to catch him, and that's what he's set up to do. So I have Davis decision, and I'm just going to stay away from the first fight of the night. How cheap is he?
Brandon Davis, being the favorite at minus 155, is 8,700 on DraftKings against Randy Costa's 7,500 plus 130 underdog. The debuter, I feel like might have opened slightly as a favorite, but since the community's come in and just been like, come on guys, this guy's really not tested. The finishes he was getting against low caliber guys, I mean, it was not something to be super proud of. Not Brandon Davis's wins. I mean, Zabit, Bochniak, Barzolas, those 3 names are all those guys would walk through Randy Brown. For
But
sure.
it makes me
Randy
just
Couture.
question, like, is Brandon Davis the guy that we know that's going to stand and bang? And that's what the UFC knows that he's going to do. So if he goes up against the specialist that sets up this question mark kick or whatever he does,
that's what he does.
Is that what Brandon Davis is there to do? So
Just eat
I'm
it.
a little tentative, like, is this a setup fight?
We usually do stay away from the first fight of the night. I think Davis really has to put it together. He easily could get that decision win, and for 8,700 he's not going to be able to pay that off. But if he gets a finish, it'll be close, especially in that third round where he only gets 50 points plus whatever he accumulated for the first 2 rounds. So at 7-5, I have other underdogs throughout the night that have as high as ceilings, but I do think that Costa, you can put on a couple lineups just because if you even touch this fight at all, usually we stay away just because if it's a quick, this guy, if he finishes, it's quickly.
So this fight fills every rule of the night.
Even
the dog or pass rule. So, yeah, done.
Done skis.
Take that
At
for
115 pounds, we have Paulina Botelho versus Lauren Mueller. Mueller coming in with a 5-1 record, getting her first loss ever against Yan Wu. Armbar submission 4 months ago. I think this was out of China. She was a minus 500 favorite going into that fight. Ended up eating a couple body shots, getting put on the ground and armbarred. It was really, really pretty unreal. I here was really hard up on Mueller. Thought her wrestling was going to get through here, but she was fighting a lot of losing fighters. Her first 4 wins prior to getting into the UFC were not good, and Wu, I don't think is that high a caliber, honestly, yet in the UFC, but she looked like a world beater in there against Mueller. So Mueller, if she's a front runner, if she can get a wrestling going, she can get you on the ground and start grappling. That's where she wants to be. But as far as strikes, she shies away and doesn't take strikes well. And against Botelho, who has a hard ass front teep and a front kick to the body, I think that this stylistically is a nightmare matchup for Mueller. I thought Mueller was going to have better takedowns. Everything I just saw was so rough. I know she had to fly to China, so that could be taking it away. But from what I see, Botelho's she's 7-2. Her only loss in the UFC is to Cavillo, and she actually defended 5 of those first takedown attempts. 5 to 4 of those first takedown attempts against Cavillo, but eventually the wrestling came through. And I think that if Botelho fights off 1 or 2 of those takedowns and lands a couple intermittent shots in between before she shoots again, eventually we're going to see Mueller fold up to a body shot. And I got TKO round number 2. Might switch that to 1, but I think Botelho, this is stylistically perfectly set up for her. Just, you're as good as your last fight, unfortunately, and Mueller really, really let me down. I think a lot of people see that her being the underdog right now. Give me Botelho. Who do you have in this fight, and why?
I have Botelho decision right now. I don't feel good about it either way. I know this is a set-up, stand-up fight, I feel like, for these women. And it's so, what is it, Muay Thai versus...
wrestling, because Mueller does not have good striking. A pitter-patter jab to throw an overhand right to usually go to grappling. And, again, once she wasn't able to do that against an Asian fighter...
Wrestler.
Yep. And then she
just
throws...
a wrestler.
Well...
that could be really... I mean, Tatiana Suarez is just,
Sure, but she's not even a submission threat. When she gets to the ground, Mueller, she more like rabbit punches you, and it's not even knockout. It's more just beat you by 1,000 cuts off of the ground.
Yeah, I just like Pollyanna's record a little better, who she's fought. I'm probably going to stay away from this fight, too. I know you see a finish here, and you think it's a body kick setup.
Yep.
That seems to be something that she likes to pull off, and I could totally see that going down. Yeah, that's exactly what she did to Kondo.
Yep, that's exactly. And it was a hard kick, and Kondo's a high-level striker, so Mueller's lacking definitely in her striking. So I think after a couple again, those are discouraged. 8,000.
Unless Botelho is awful against wrestlers, because isn't that a big thing that kind of cost
But Cavillo's way better wrestler still than what Mueller last showed us. Mueller just couldn't beat an Asian fighter in wrestling. I'm just saying, could be wrong there. Could be a bad stereotype. But a non-wrestler came in and easily worked her. Again, she got beat up on the feet before that happened. So there is other factors. But the favorite right now, minus 160, Botelho is 8,900 on DraftKings against Mueller's plus 135, 7,300. I totally agree with that. Though it's really high. She has to get a finish to pay that off. So I'm going to probably do like 40 to 30% Botello and 0 Mueller. But I'm not going to overexpose myself to this
I may
fight.
be 1-1. Maybe.
On to 135 pounds, we have Montel Jackson versus Andre Sukemthath.
This is how we do it.
Montel Jackson coming in at a 7-1 record, getting a win over Brian Kelleher submission Darce 3 months ago. Prior to that, losing to Ricky Simone, but winning his Contender Series fight via TKO. Notably, Montel Jackson has the biggest hands in the UFC, having bigger hands than Francis Ngannou. At 135 pounds, he needs bigger gloves.
That shit be cray.
That is unreal. So he comes in with heavy strikes. He's only been a professional fighter for a little over a year as well. Only started training about a year and something, but naturally an athlete, super heavy-handed, great movement, great footwork. On the ground is naturally just gifted. This guy's just a fighter and really shown it against Kelleher. I mean, he schooled him on the ground. And Montel Jackson is known to be more of a striker, so it's really interesting that he's the biggest favorite of the entire night here, Montel Jackson, because I do think it's playing off of that
Brian Kelleher
win.
Being a huge underdog.
Exactly. I think it was fairly close, but nobody saw the submission coming, so people are like, wow, this guy's good on the ground and striking. He's going to be a monster. I think what his kryptonite is those wrestlers that Simone did was just keep taking him down so much that he can't get those punches off and he loses on the scorecards. And unfortunately for Sohamptath, that's not his style. The 13-6 fighter is a counter striker with good switches, has a mean straight left, and is really such a counter striker that he's tentative and has low output and has arguably some of the worst fight IQ in there. I know he's got a finish as of late, to Luke Saunders, but then he lost to, who was it? Sean O'Malley in a decision where Sean O'Malley obviously broke his foot and all he needed to do was take him down. So there's that questionable IQ. But as of late, he beat Jonathan Martinez in a close decision, ended up using that striking to knock down Martinez 3, if not 4 times in that fight, and still just didn't have that killer instinct to go in there and try to finish it. Again, just questionable IQ for Sohamptath. And I like him because his Muay Thai is crisp. He has a really good jab, but he doesn't follow it up. So Sohamptath will throw 1 or 2 heavy strikes and then sit there. And he'll get countered or then just react. So I think he gives away more fights than he wins a lot of the time, unfortunately, for his style. And Jackson just has kind of his choice of where he wants to take this fight. So Sohamptath's takedown defense is pretty good, and he actually has decent shots when he does shoot him in there. Jackson can't get taken down and has been taken down by everyone, but I just don't see Sohamptath having the wherewithal that even if he starts to win a fight, to just have faith in him. I got Jackson decision. I know this is the biggest favorite of the night. I don't think it should be that big of a favorite. I think Sohamptath sits back so much that it turns like Theradoa type fight where you're like, oh, what are they doing in there? Oh, all of a sudden it's a decision. So I think there's a low score all the way around. I know tons of people are going heavy Jackson. That's cool if you're betting wise, but DraftKings wise, I see this being pretty much a stay away in my eyes.
Is he patient enough to sit back and wait, or is he going to get frustrated and do something crazy?
I think that Jackson will also sit back as well, and they'll just kind of feel each other out, but I feel like one of them's they're not going to be there to fight each other. So Sohamptath almost turns and runs at times. Like he will literally turn his hips and be like, okay, I'm going to get back over here. And it'll take 30 seconds in between time. He takes a lot of rests and slows down fights. He slows down a lot of fights. Look at his fight statistics. A lot of people don't have high outputs, and it's because he hurts you. So Sohamptath stays on a game plan, but he limits himself with that game plan.
Yeah.
So I think it's a decision, but a lot of people see a finish here. Do you see a finish?
I have a decision as well. Just I don't think Sohamptath is chinny at all.
I agree.
And at this, not that we don't see crazy heavy-handed guys at this division, and Jackson could for sure be one of those dudes. I just Andre Sohamptath, the Asian sensation, is going to make you work for that decision, and yeah, I think it could turn boring as well. So Jackson decision. I can't see him being this heavy of a favorite. I think he should be because I think it could go to decision, and I think it could even be a split, depending on where are we. What are we doing? We're in Atlanta.
We are in Atlanta,
we
Georgia.
Are in Hotlanta.
So
we are, yeah. So you can take a shot anytime we say Hotlanta for the rest of the year. Isn't that how many times are they going to say Hotlanta was a bet for the Super Bowl?
So Montel Jackson, huge favorite in Hotlanta. He isn't local. He's fighting out of Wisconsin. The more local guy is Sohamthas, being the top team fighter now for a little while. Agreed, the line's off here. 9,400 on DraftKings for the minus 400 favorite.
We both have him to win. Take it for what it is. I just don't know if it's going to be as high a points
he
as everyone
has to score 90 points or above.
Yeah, I think that would actually be something like, hey, do yourself a favor, maybe don't put that on your cards.
I agree.
People, if they go heavy on that because of the Brian Kelleher, it could be dangerous. Unless you see a submission happening.
I don't see that happening as well. I think they keep this striking the entire time. So Camfath ends up being...
Brian Kelleher hurt something in himself?
I think he ate a punch. That hurt him, and then he went down and ended up getting darsed. 6,800 for the Asian sensation. I don't think I'm going to play him anywhere. He's just usually fairly low output. But he does have power. I'm going to stay away from this fight completely on DraftKings. I don't see any value on either guy. There's going to be other spots. I don't think this is one of them whatsoever. At welterweight, we have Belal Muhammad coming in against Curtis Millender, being 17-4. Curtis Millender has already had quite a few fights in the UFC, winning his Contender Series fight, beating Max Griffin in a decision, then ended up beating Badharazara in a decision 3 months ago. Just got his first loss against Ezekiel Zaleski. The underdog that Latby here called out was obviously just a little bit better on the ground, and Zaleski came out afterwards and said, my coaches said Millender doesn't have a ground game, so as soon as he went there, it was easy pickings, and it showed it. Curtis Millender is a striker, and a really, really good striker at that. There's a reason that there's a lot of hype on guys, and he scared people. He was showing intermittent takedown defense, but if you get him to come in on his strikes like any good wrestler will, you'll be able to get him on the ground, and Millender showed a lot of grappling disadvantages that once he gets down, he didn't really show that he could get back up against Zaleski. Again, Zaleski's a badass, but that's a UFC, baby. Like, that's what you get. So, Belal Muhammad here is definitely the type of guy to be able to exploit that one avenue that Millender has issues with, and it's the takedown defense, and then once he's on the ground, getting back up. That's what Belal Muhammad does. His striking's always getting a little bit better. He's training out of that Rufus Sport Academy, having all sorts of great training partners. He's coming off with a 14-3 record. As of late, though, he just came off a brutal loss to Geoff Neal in a all-heart bout 2 months ago. And if it was a lot of other corners, I think the towel could have been thrown in at times. Because Muhammad got his ass kicked in the third round, got up, and kept moving forward. And you got to give him credit for that.
How many weeks ago did that happen?
8 weeks ago. 8 weeks ago, he had the daylight beat out of him.
Just saying.
He ate how many head kicks in that by Neal? How many flush, straight kicks to the face? So, he is a little bit, his brain's a little rattled still. I don't think it's healed fully enough. Then, what do I know what I'm talking about? These are just rules that we tend to play here at Lappy. And this is one of those, like, when you cross this line, it's like, ooh, okay, I really need to be careful with my money here because I can't trust I know your heart's there, but your mind not be fully healed. Exactly. So with Millender,
guy's heart will kill him.
100%. He'll die. He'll die in that ring. And Muhammad is one of those guys. But if he gets it to the ground even once, Muhammad could exploit this fight and end up winning. So this is a coin flip of a fight. I see how Muhammad is the rightfully so favorite here, and he's a minus 125 favorite. I do think the wrestling takes over, and I do think with the D1 wrestling, he immediately pushes him up against the fence, takes him down, and it's Submission City. But if one kick, one knee lands with all that damage, I got Muhammad decision. I almost switched to Millender just because it's one of these rules that we don't like to cross that line. But I'm going to stay away from this fight. I'm going to sit back and watch. There's too many intangibles. There's holes that can be exploited on both sides right now, and it's just Muhammad's getting back a little earlier than I would like. I could wake up tomorrow and have Millender TKO round number 1. Give me Muhammad decision. Who do you have in this fight?
Right now, I actually have Melinda KO round number 3. I want to move it up to round number 2. Something about Khalil Muhammad's ego won't allow him to use the wrestling. It's like a Justin Gaethje in ways sometimes. He wants to stand and bang, and in way that mentality is what makes me think he's set up for this fight. So 8 weeks to 10 weeks ago, whenever this friggin' fight was that this battle that he was just in, and now he's going to come in there against a guy like Curtis Millender. So he's going to lose his nose, the ability to breathe out of his face in the very first round. And that's going to weaken him. Curtis Millender has decent takedown defense. Yes, we did see it exploited a little bit, but I think he's just the bigger guy here all the way around. And I don't like that few months ago. Mm-hmm. I like Belil. He's like a grinder. He's good for 15 minutes of a fight. Just, homie, I can't get down with 2 months. I have Millender KO round number 2. I might have to spread both guys out on cards and maybe only go with 30% on both guys. Only because I can see Belil Muhammad in another gruesome battle, but he, like you're saying, he looked like garbage by the end of that last fight, and a body can only take so much.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm going to stay away from Belil Muhammad on this fight. I'm going to have Curtis Millender maybe on like 30% of my cards. I just don't like that 2 months ago battle.
I totally agree. I think you could put either guy on it. Obviously, the value on DraftKings as the underdog plus 105. Curtis Millender, 7,700.
Because the other thing I have to say, Zaleski is Wolverine, like a monster-sized dude compared to Belil. Even though he exploited that, I just don't know. Like,
it's that 2 months ago. He was in change of type of life type of a fight.
And we do know this as well. I understand that Millender, you're like, hey, Millender just lost a month ago. Yeah, that submission loss like that is a totally different thing.
I totally agree. Like, he went to training on Monday and was like, I'm fine. Like, that was just, I got choked out. Where Muhammad got battered for 3 rounds. Even, I mean, he controversially might have won that 3rd round, but he was knocked down in every round. It was just, I love everything
about Belil except for that time frame.
I could switch, but I agree with you.
He's the younger guy of the two, I think. Is he? Am I making that up?
He is by a year. 30 years old to 31 years old.
He seems ring old to me. He is like octagon old. That is the double O. He got that octagon old. And here I'm saying another thing too. All Rufus sport or no Rufus sport?
Ooh, so where are you on this one? No Rufus sport.
No Rufus sport.
Interesting. I mean, I could still wake up and go with Millender. I don't agree with the line on DraftKings for 8,500 for Muhammad, minus 125 favorite. This is a real coin flip. I might go Millender. I really don't like that head trauma as of late, but that's a really close fight. That's a fun one. That's fun to watch regardless. That's a fight. Get your friends, get your wife, be like, hey, come watch this, guys, because this is going to be some crazy shit that's going to happen on either side. Submission or knockout for the other fighter.
Finish. So
I think a prop.
Inside the distance.
Totally. That's what I see happening in that fight. I don't see a decision coming up. So expose yourself either way. On to 135 pounds. We have Boston Salmon coming in versus Khalil Taha. Taha being 12-2, getting a loss in the UFC against Nad Narimani in his debut. He's a brace fighter who's only lost outside of the organization of the UFC to Usaku via guillotine. But Taha comes in with crisp boxing, stout young man out of Germany, moves forward, okay head movement. He's got a really thick neck and relies on that chin at times. On the ground, he seems very, very solid. His takedowns are powerful, but he does start to slow down, especially after that first round. That dense muscle just starts to load up on his shots a little bit more. His limited head movements gets even more limited, and he's more just of a tank type of a guy. He'll stay in front of you, eat your best shot to be able to land his best shot, and a technician, somebody with game planning, is going to be able to get Taha out of here. Taha's is borderline UFC. Like, if Taha will he'll beat the bottom of the barrel of the UFC, but I don't think he's going to move too far forward. I know he's young at 26, so he can still grow a lot. As far as an athlete, he has everything he needs in it. He's gotten there with a lot more athleticism than actual fight technical ability. Tends to be a bruiser. Now that he's in the UFC, Nad Narimani really looked like a next level fighter in there against Taha, and we just saw Nad get pieced up in there. So was it Taha maybe just isn't even as good as we initially thought? But against the Boston Salmon Dana White Contender Series RFA contender.
When your name's Boston Salmon, do you need a nickname?
Yeah, and it ends up being Boom Boom, doesn't it?
Yeah, I kind of like just Boston Salmon.
I agree.
It's so weird. Like
the Salmon. All you need is the. And you're
Boston
good.
the Salmon.
But I feel like this is a guy who had...
Upstream!
Does he have to be born out of Philadelphia?
Who?
Boston Salmon.
Is he born? Oh, to have that name?
Yeah.
Massachusetts?
Massachusetts, my bad.
No, I actually went to school with a Boston.
Interesting.
Yeah, I won't say his last name, but I did go to school with a Boston as well. And I also think there's that Modest Mouse lyric that, like, we name our children after towns that we've never been to.
That's funny. That's funny. So do you think with the name Boston, since you knew one, did he grow up being a fighter?
No, I seem like a chill long hair kid.
Well, Salmon likes to box in there at 6-1. Only lost in the RFA in a split decision, but in the UFC won his Contender Series fight over a year, 8 months ago, and still hasn't debuted after winning his decision fight. I know a lot of people have been hyping Salmon up for a long time. The 28-year-old fighting out of Extreme Couture has heavy boxing credentials.
Did he have some kind of surgery or something in between?
I don't know. I did try to look up why it took so long, and I couldn't see any surgeries or anything. I haven't seen any recent. I think he was taking more time to develop, and hey, that's really good. Kind of saw it because he was a huge, I feel like, 300 or 400 favorite for his Contender Series fight, and it was a contested decision. It wasn't as easy as a fight as it should have been, and we've seen these guys that lose.
Is he a Jim Favor?
Extreme
Couture?
I don't think so. I know that Couture has been on the opposite side of Dana White for a long time, and they recently mended some of those wounds that they had. But Randy Couture was one of the few guys that was stricken from the UFC record for a bit, and he was the most winningest champ of all time. So I don't think it was a favor. I do think Boston Salmon earned his spot, but in a year and a half or a year, 8 months, this guy can get all sorts of good at 28 years old. He can grow leaps and bounds. And striking-wise, he's good enough takedown defense, especially coming out of that Randy Couture scene. And he does have high school, I think, semi-college credentials for Salmon. But he really has more. Is a really good boxer. Will tee you up. And I think that Taha, the way he moves with big swinging, looping punches on a straight line. And I just see... I'll kill you by 1,000 cuts. This is Boston Salmon's going to employ more of a Dominic Cruz type of style where it's not going to be a knockout punch or kick, but he's going to be landing 5 to 6 punches to every Taha's one. So I got a heavy 30-27 Boston Salmon decision, but I see low points on DraftKings for this one. I do think it goes all three. Who do you have in this fight and why?
So you think Boston Salmon by a very technical decision.
Correct.
I have Salmon decision as well. The only thing I don't like about this fight is that Taha's going down in weight. And it just makes, anytime that a guy is coming down a weight class, I wonder how dangerous he's going to be. But you know what? I will also say this. We aren't seeing anyone succeed going down, but we are seeing a lot of guys succeed going up. So,
Labiru getting in the ring.
I think it might be a little
interesting.
nuance. See, everyone that goes up usually do pretty okay, and then the guys that...
What about Contender Series fighters? Guys that fight at 155 and then come in and go to 45 because you can only fight so many times on the show, you know.
Yeah.
Are they the only
guys? That might
guys?
be a different thing.
They're the only ones, though. I'm thinking, like, where's the loophole? Okay, I got one.
Yeah.
So that's
that
the
might
only
be
one.
a different thing, but really, I won't even discuss them because I don't know anything about them, which is a little bit of how I feel about Boston Salmon as well. So even though I have Salmon decision and I feel good about it in every way, I'm going to stick with what I know, guys, and I'm going to listen to the Bean on this and say, oh, so if we change the name of the show, Lesbo and the Bean?
Oh?
Like,
what other things that we've thought of?
No.
What are the fans gonna say?
Are we gonna be if anytime I say the Bean or you say Lesbo, people will be like, what the?
Well, our real OG fans will be like, duh. You'll know when you get there, kids.
Will we start calling each other by our real names?
I don't mind it. It don't hurt. It don't hurt. I can take it.
So
I've been called worse things in my name. Boston Salmon decision.
What about if your name, like, just oddly was like Chicago Tuna?
I wouldn't be ashamed of that at all.
What about if my name was like Philly Seabass? All right. Yeah, salmon decision, but I'm not going to play it heavy. I'm going to stick with
I totally agree. For 8,600, the slight favorite at minus 130, Boston Salmon on DraftKings. Taha being the plus 110 underdog, 7,600. I don't see playing this fight anywhere for either fighter at all. At 170 pounds, we're going to have Max Griffin coming in against debuting Zalim Idmadaev. The Russian fighter is coming in with a perfect record of 8-0. He is fighting out of Russia, 24 years old. He's been out of AKA this last training camp and a half now. So he's been training with, no, it might not be AKA. I'm getting this mixed up. Who was he? He's in the States.
The Russians.
He was in the States, and I can't remember the team he was training with. Go ahead. What were you about to say?
I was going to say that guy ATKA, I think that kind of looks similar to him, is Khabib's training partner, who I don't think's in the UFC anymore. Isn't he the guy that got kicked out of the UFC? The guy that kind of looks like him on AKA?
A lot of them look like him, but yes, I totally could be thinking of
all
that.
White people look alike? Are they white people?
Eastern European Russians. I mean, it's tough sometimes. It is tough, and he fits that mold a few times. But the 8-0 fighter definitely has been fighting a bunch of cans, just like the other debut fighter. I'm really surprised at Max Griffin actually getting thrown a bone here. If you look at Max Griffin's record, 14-6, his losses are coming against top level fighters. Not again, I mean, the 8-0 up and coming 24-year-old likes to throw some spinning shit in there. He likes to brawl, throws elbows, spinning kicks. Rarely on the spinning kicks every once in a while, but he tends to move forward. If you look at Zalem's record, he has been finishing, I feel like, all 8 of his fights, but he's fighting 0-0 fighters. He's fighting 0-2 fighters out of Global 1. Amadiev. Zalem, is that how he pronounces his first name?
Zalim Amadiev.
Amadiev, and ended up just going through a bunch of trash cans. And the word on the street is the training partners he has found in the States, which I don't necessarily know if it's AKA, is because people that have trained with him here in the States are like, this guy's an asshole, and he throws spinning elbows at practice. We throw out practice.
Dick.
Yeah, that's Dick. Eventually you limit yourself in training partners and don't get the highest caliber competition in the gym, so eventually you get stunted, and that's just not a good way. It does work for a certain extent, but now you in the UFC, you're fighting guys that are going to be able to eat those shots, so all of a sudden, when we see this untested gas tank going to rounds 2 and 3, we don't know what he looks like. I haven't seen it yet, but from what I've seen so far, this guy looks like he's about to gas in the first round. It's just, he's fighting 0-2 fighters. They just got off of their taxi shift, got into MMA gloves, and are like, all right. One guy put down his beer tray and was like, all right, guys, hold on. Keep these beers cold. I got to go fight.
One was like, did you hear how Max Holloway, his first fight, he really just wanted to go see the fights, but it was $30 to get in.
And he's like, oh, you're going to be a fighter? Okay, I guess I'm fighting.
Yeah.
100%. I love it.
So funny.
That's so awesome. There's a couple other UFC guys that's exactly how it happened, where they were like,
I had $30.
They're like, I was just drinking a beer an hour ago, and all of a sudden I'm fighting in the cage. That's how you know they're fighters, when they keep going along, and love it. But Imadlev, how do we pronounce that again? Zalim.
Max Griffin, that's how we pronounce it.
So Max Griffin's fought, again, super high competition, losing his last two to Curtis Melender in a decision. Thiago Alves in a split decision that was a robbery. Griffin knocked down Alves in 2 of those rounds.
It was in Brazil, I think.
Yeah, there's no way Alves won that. That's one of the most egregious robberies we've seen in a long time.
And going to decision with Zaleski, who we just were talking about, what a monster he is.
100%. Max Griffin's one of these guys that people have said he underperforms, but look at the guys he's losing to. I know Curtis Melender, but that stayed a striking battle, and that's because Max Griffin does not shoot takedowns.
Right now, Max Griffin is the underdog on this fight, and I have him decision as well. I think if you can make a couple of small bets in right now, because I can't see how he's the underdog.
It's been going back and forth. There's a lot of hype on this Russian fighter, And it's because he's
He
blowing guys
must
out of the
be
water.
at AKA.
I think
But
he is at
might be
AKA.
right. He's got to be at a gym that has some kind of respect, because I'll look it up while you're...
But with Max Griffin, he doesn't like to shoot takedowns, so we don't have to worry about this going to the ground. The Russian likes to strike on the ground. The Russian is shown good ground and pound again against nobody. So on the ground, I think Griffin, if it randomly gets there, he'll be able to get back up. Griffin's chin's held up. He's beat fighters like Mike Perry, Eric Montano. Who else did he beat in there? He's got other wins in there, but he just has so much higher level competition, so much. It's already further up on the card. This is where those lights get to you for the Russian fighter. And I think after a couple of these spinning things, even if they land, the Russian fighter actually has a really hard left hand. He throws a really hard left leaping hook off of his right, and it catches a lot of people. But again, Max Griffin has eaten these type of left hooks from other fighters, gone in and been able to get a game plan, win a decision. I got Griffin decision.
He's a Chechnyan fighter. He's their next prospect. Let's see. Which Chechnya is the same as Dagestan, where it's Russia.
War-torn.
Yeah, it's Russia. But yeah, to be specific, I think they're very proud people. I know, I'm looking. I don't see...
I don't think I saw. I think I'm getting it confused. He was training with someone else that was a trainer that I did not recognize off the top of my head. But there was a lot of tape that I was looking into because it got deep with a couple of these guys. Just their backgrounds out of the global M1 scene, though. Give me the underdog, Max Griffin.
I agree. Stick with what you know. Max Griffin has done enough for you.
Totally agree.
Respect what's going to happen. He's not Chenny.
On DraftKings, 8,000 for Max Griffin. For the debuter, Zalem.
There's your mid guy. You always need a couple of mid guys.
Agreed. 8,200. I do think it's a decision. I could actually even see Griffin finishing this in the third round because, again, we haven't seen this Russian get tested at all. So, for all we know, he could be a quitter. He's a front runner. For everything we've seen, he knocks you out in the first 2 minutes. In the second round, he got into the guy he was fighting was 0-0 and was like, fuck this, I don't want to be in here. So, again, go with what you know. I think I'm going to actually play Griffin on probably like 60 to 70%.
Points?
58 points for Griffin.
Not a ton, but sometimes you need that guy. And
Yes.
with a win on that, he hadn't had a lot of wins lately. So with 20 points on that score, you're setting yourself up with a 78. That's right about where he should be for 8,000.
I totally agree. Totally agree. So a fun one we have coming into the 125-pound division. We have former title contender Wilson Hayes coming in against Alejandro Pantoja. Pantoja being 20-3, the Contender Series Latin America winner, only losing in the UFC against Dustin Ortiz. Pantoja, maybe he didn't win the Contender Series, but he was a finalist in it. I could be even wrong there. There's so many of these Contender Series fights, but either way, Ortiz in the UFC
Listen
lost
back,
to...
I'm sure you said it right sometime one of the shows.
Pantoja getting wins over Brandon Moreno decision 10 months ago, and then as of late beating Uka Sasaki in a submission 4 months ago, which Sakai isn't looking as good as we thought he was. Pantoja having heavy duty leg kicks, good Muay Thai, great jab in there, has serviceable cardio, does slow down, but I mean, at 135 pounds, these guys, or 25 pounds, these guys move very, very fast. He's got a win in there over Eric Shelton as well in a split decision, so that should be a testament to some of that cardio. Pantoja just serviceable everywhere with power in that left hand. And with Wilson Hayes, some of the things that he's really been lacking in has been that chin. He has only been officially finished once due to strikes, but in every single one of his fights, I feel like Wilson Hayes usually gets rocked in some form or fashion and then has to scramble to his good double leg or single leg takedown, get it to the ground. And once he's on the ground, Wilson Hayes is a master on the ground. Now, this isn't, Pantoja's shown us on the ground that he likes to put in a triangle. He's held people in really gnarly spots and can submit you, but we're not worried about Wilson Hayes getting submitted. But I don't think that Wilson Hayes is either going to be able to submit Pantoja here as well. The losses that Wilson Hayes has at 23-9 is only to Demetrius Johnson in the UFC, Henry Cejudo, and John Moraga decision. He's coming off of a win, the Big Ten to win. And I think that a lot of the same things that go in that Big Ten fight go into this Pantoja fight because I really only see Pantoja landing that knockout shot to get the win, where Pantoja's serviceable everywhere. I do think that Wilson Hayes has a better all-around wrestling game, and Wilson has learned in a bit, especially after that Big Ten fight and those other knockouts he's had, that he goes for that takedown nonstop. He's really started to go a lot more to that grappling, and I really see an avenue for these shots once Pantoja starts to get into his striking a little bit and back off of his takedown defense. He gets taken down in a lot of his fights, and I really see Wilson Hayes, if he doesn't get clipped with an uppercut or a knee coming in on the inside, even if he eats a couple of them, I think that he's been hurt enough at times and can land in advantageous positions and not necessarily get the submission, but I do think he can get the position. So I have a 29-28. Give me a dirty-ass split. You need another underdog. You're going to get him here with Wilson Hayes. For the bean. Who do you have in this fight?
Diego Sanchez
I think he's going to grapple fuck the shit out of him.
If he's smart, he would do that. And I just noticed that Pantoja's takedown defense has gotten better and better that his fights has gone on since the Dustin Ortiz fight, which, take it for what it is, I think you are the only person on the planet that called that exactly to go like that, in which you kind of think it's going to happen again, which might sway me here. I want to put Pantoja decision just because I think...
You know what this fight reminds me of as well when you're saying this? Who did I just have? Was it Moraga versus Divicio?
Did we have Moraga as an underdog?
Figueiredo? I had him as an underdog, but it was the same. I was like, his wrestling. Or Formigas? I was like, his wrestling over Divicio. And everyone's, he's going to get knocked out. I'm like, well, if that uppercut lands, he's done. But if it doesn't, he's about to get grappled into a loss. And I kind of see that exact same train of thought.
That exact same thing happening again. What about, was his last fight with Ben Nguyen, was that at 135 or 125?
I think it's 125. Ben is a small guy.
Been 125?
Yeah, it's been 125. And his title...
I know Cejudo is, and
DJ as well.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So I don't know why he would have gone up. I have Pantoja decision right now. It's interesting. We'll be able to tell right away how the judges are and what matters. But I think the thing that's making me feel comfortable with it is the Brandon Moreno win. I just really love Brandon Moreno. I think he has a high ring IQ even when he's rocked in there. And he can kind of pull out these same things where he can get in the inside. And I felt like Pantoja was a little better put together. Hopefully he's prepared for it. If you know it, hopefully they know it. But that tends to happen, the wrestling, that dirty, grimy wrestling. I just think Wilson Hayes is kind of... This is more of a cash on Wilson Hayes than it is...
Is more of a fade? There's more of a fade, what you're saying. I agree and can see that as well.
I think Pantoja has some of the most power in the division. And Wilson Hayes is just one of the guys with a shaky chin where, you're saying...
He gets hurt in every fight.
Pantoja, he's so aggressive that once he hurts him, he jumps on them, that it could get called just with the amount of punches without defending.
Like hammer fist to the side of the head.
Yeah, or something crazy. Or uppercut. Anyways, so yeah, right now, Pantoja decision. But look at anything I just said, the avenue was finish.
Ooh,
but I'm going with decision.
Decision, and I have a decision. So, how do you feel for 8,800 for the minus 170 favorite Pantoja against Wilson Hayes' plus 145?
What's Pantoja's points?
Average 79 points.
Oh, that's not worth it for
8,800. He has to get a finish against Wilson Hayes, 7,400.
That's my respect for Wilson Hayes is what everyone's saying. Because Cejudo got that knockout, everyone's saying Pantoja's going to come in. But Cejudo's been on a mat. He's champion. He's a champion.
He just knocked out a steroid up guy.
Yeah, he didn't even care. EPOs.
Still steroids. Still illegal substance.
But isn't steroids?
True. It is encompassing. You're right. But that's a fun one. How much are you going to expose yourself to Pantoja in that spot? Because I feel like I'm going to probably put like 40% Hayes and then Pantoja maybe on one or two, but he has to get a finish. Like he's one or two because that bottom
I'm going to put Pantoja on one or two and then Hayes nowhere.
Oh.
He's that's a fun one. Trying to fade for a while.
Yes, you have. And I think I went against him finally the last time and he got me. So we'll see. That's going to be throughout the night though. There's so many close fights. This is such a freaking stacked pay-per-view. These have been fun ones. And another fun one we have at 100.
It's stacked, but it's hardcore stacked.
Yep.
This one's for the hardcores. There's a lot of... I think there's going to be more fun. This is going to be the one that if you're just you're a sports fan, you're not necessarily an MMA fan, you're going to miss this one. And this is going to be the one that all the clips come from for the next
totally.
years.
Totally. Coin flips all over the place. One being in Jalen Turner against Matt Frivola at 155 pounds. Frivola coming in with a 6-1-1 record, getting a dirty-ass draw against Lando Venata 5 months ago. Prior to that, he had a loss versus Polo Reyes, short notice fight where he got knocked out. But he won his Contender Series fight. The Gracie Tampa, Florida fighter, is 28 years old and really serviceable. Clean boxing, good leg kicks, good takedown defense, a scrapper. I feel like that got away from him a bit in that Polo Reyes fight when it was short notice and he came in against a heavy puncher and kind of threw 2 sheets to the wind and was like, all right, I'm just going to go and throw my card out there, because Frivola hits hard. He really does hit hard. That's Lando Venata. Lando Venata was hurt a few times in there, and there was proper adjustments on both sides, and that's one of the fight of the years. Go back and watch that fight. It was an amazing fight, and both guys came to shine, and I really liked the what I saw from Frivola's last draw fight against Venata. Venata, though, is tentative. Venata's one of these guys that fights to the level of his opponent, and we've really seen it nonstop. Venata is
Cowboy, BMF. No, wait.
No, he's alpha male. Venata was alpha male.
Is he?
Yeah, and I think he goes not to Cerrone, BMF as well. He shares time between those. But
I thought he was Jackson Wink Cerrone, maybe. But
no, Venata could be Jackson Wink. Yeah, you're right.
Style
You're right.
that we've seen of them on the outside. That's kind of how he fights, like that.
But Frivola, good cardio. I mean, just all the way around. This is a guy with power that's serviceable everywhere, and I think that he's really being, I guess, undervalued, even though this is pretty close to a coin flip, and there's a lot of reasons why against Jalen Turner's 8-4. Turner comes out and lets it all out. He tries to finish you whenever he can. He came in short notice against Luque, stepped in 6 months ago, ended up getting finished, but that's nothing to scoff at. That's nothing to... He needed that fight just to get in the UFC, even though he won his Contender Series bout, and he did his part. Turner's a very, very flashy fighter. He knocked out his Contender Series fight via broken foot for Max Muzaki there, but in the TKO that he got 2 months ago against Callan Potter, Potter is just really low level, and Turner was able to really use his size, knees, clinch in there to finish him. Jalen Turner's a great first round fighter. He starts to get iffy second round. Third round, you're holding on to the seat of your pants because you're like, all right, Turner, you just got to not get submitted, and standing, you got to keep your hands up because he just is so long. I feel like the weight cut gets to him. He is 6'3" at 155 pounds, and he really towers over his guys. But in his tall length that he has, that he uses actually pretty well, on the ground, he's really long and gets into weird scrambles, but he doesn't really understand how to lock up position. So he'll more make you scramble than actually try to submit you, where on the ground, I think Frivola can get the better top position and land a lot better ground strikes. And striking-wise, I don't think he gets blown out of the water. I think he moves well on the outside, and I actually have another underdog. I think Frivola takes over in round 2, and I see actually a third-round finish for Matt Frivola as an underdog. This is a coin flip. Could switch.
Crazy as hell.
But that's a fun fight. I'm really excited for this.
Is the kid with his dad in the corner?
I could be wrong. I don't know about that one. I don't know about that.
I don't know at all. It's crazy as hell, but I actually have Frivola too. I just think that cardio is going to eventually catch up. He looked so good, and going to decision with a guy like Lando Venata, which to me is an underrated guy. He's just one of those like grinders, and he's 28. Perfect timing. I think Jalen Turner is being overvalued here a little bit. I do understand how young Jalen Turner is. I'm wondering the weight cut as well. I wonder how much more natural 170 would be. But Matt Frivola is a guy that hits really hard, and he works the body as well as the head, which I think is going to cut into the cardio of Jalen, which we see get tested anyway.
Yep.
So when a guy is intelligent enough to, like you were saying, make the right adjustments in his last fight against a guy like Lando Venata, against Jalen Turner, he's going to work the body a little more. He's going to work that cardio a little more. And I also think with the leg kicks, he's going to take away some of the worrisome power. He has like hidden experience inside the octagon.
Totally agree.
At first, like when I first looked at this fight, I thought Jalen Turner all day.
That's what I did.
And then I studied to dissect the fight a little bit. I love Frivola in this. I just have the finish coming in round 3, but I see a finish as well, which is a little
for Frivola.
Yeah.
So you just see a finish in round 3, exactly what I just said.
Oh, I thought you said 2.
I did say 2. 2 or 3. I think I'm moving on to 3 as well, but I agree.
You guys are going to listen to that tape and say he said 2.
I did say 2. I'm sure. But I see a finish for Vola.
I agree too.
I'm sure I said 2, but yes, I think it's a finish for Vola. Underdog there for Labby. I like it.
Steamroller for Vola.
Going in there to get the win. That's an exciting, sneaky fight. Jalen Turner is just one of those guys that if he doesn't finish, he gets finished, kind of in my eyes. So I think eventually he gets finished. On DraftKings, you're going to have to pay up for Jalen Turner at $8,400 against Frivola's $7,800. How often are you going to end up putting Frivola on your spots there? You got to finish round 3. I got round 2, 3.
I might put him in some places for that. Under 8, I think he's going to... How many points does he get anyway?
27.8 average. Yeah, exactly.
He throw a lot of punches. They're just heavy.
Turner's an average is 61 on DraftKings, but...
I think it's the dogger pass play there.
I totally agree with that. Probably around that 40% for Frivola as well. I might even put a shot on Turner or 2 just because I see an inside the distance that fight. Regardless, either guy who gets that done.
I do too.
So, if you haven't liked and subscribed, remember, at Weakneck Baby, at Zoltanite, at Lesbo and the Bean, it is where you can find us on Instagram.
On the gram, and also you can find us with our special code LATB15 at latherandcompany.com.
If you want to get that is it the antioxidant face wash?
Facial detox bar.
The facial detox bar. I'm going to name it my Matt bar because that's what I'll end up using when I go roll around, just because for the beneficial flora of your skin is why they use it for their face. It actually works to give you the best resistance to microbes in there. I also really like their sandalwood smells. I got one of those at home right now. Woo! Smells good.
I'm just digging on the vanilla and tobacco. That's a nice... See, we're telling you masculine scents too, so don't get your lady...
Get your lady and be like, hey, check this out. Get this for me. For my birthday.
Yeah, and be like, look, you might find stuff on here you like too.
Oh. They got lady stuff too. Go for it.
Oh, speaking of birthdays.
Oh, thank you.
If you guys feel like sending Twitter shout outs at Zoltanite, you can send the Bean a happy birthday. And he is officially a high-level Mason.
Officially here at Lappy.
Very high-level Mason.
My birthday wish was to break down a hell of a duty pay-per-view. And here we are, living life to its fullest. Living our best life.
Thanks to the UFC for bringing that to you.
The main event opens up with the rematch in...
Oh, yeah. Before we finish, real quick.
Yes.
Labby15, latherandcompany.com.
Very true. You need that. That's right. Well, you got to save the money.
Yeah.
That's what we do here. The money you're winning off this weekend, you got to put into that Labby15.
Yes.
This is how you're going to save all the way around.
Good. My grandma would say, those are those sweet smell-ums.
I like that.
You got them sweet smell-ums on.
That smell good. That smell good.
That's what they called it in your video.
In the military.
In
the military, it's that smell good.
Smell good.
It's that smell good. They'll be like, you smell good.
Yeah, that good.
So, opening up the main event, the pay-per-view, you're going to need to lay down a good $65.99 for your pay-per-view. Is this officially on
ESPN
Plus? Through ESPN Plus that you have to pay for this pay-per-view now in the United States, or BT2, whatever you got to do, you're going to end up finding these fights. It's going to be a fun one in a rematch at 205 pounds with Nikola Krylov against Vincent St. Preux. Krylov being 25-6, coming back to the UFC after a 4-fight stint out of it after falling out his first run in the UFC. Krylov has some really interesting stats. Some of the shortest time in the UFC with the most fights. He has over 7 or 8 fights and still barely only fought like 6 or 8 minutes. He just tends to get it done in there. And it tends to be with a lot of kicks. He'll come out there and throw question mark kicks, not as much as that Zohan guy, but later on in the fight, but he will just throw kicks from anywhere, throws uppercuts, a lot of weight into him, and been really focusing on his striking game since he came back to the UFC. But what we've seen a deficiency with Krylov has been that submission game. Jan Blachowicz, one of our faves here for a long time, showed that. He ended up lining up those body kicks, which eventually got Krylov to the ground. And once on the ground, Krylov does go for high percentage moves or very flashy moves, but not high percentage, high flash moves. And he'll get them at times. And at other times, he'll just put himself in a worse position. And that's exactly what happened in their first meeting with OSP. OSP ended up getting that patented bland flu choke on the ground, and that's because Krylov was holding on to that head when he didn't need to be, and that's him just trying to create a scramble, and that was him being young. Still at 26, being his second run in the UFC, Krylov has a long time to grow. He's the guy here that's going to end up growing from leaps and bounds from fight to fight. Even though he lost that Blachowicz fight, it really actually, I was higher on Krylov coming back in after he blew out these bums in the scene that he was, but UFC is just such higher caliber, and we've seen OSP come in and get 5-round decisions against John Jones on a day's notice. OSP is an athlete, heavy kicks, lost a decision 6 months ago to Reyes. He did get beat up more so than he's ever been in that fight, but OSP's always got that hard head kick as well. He's one of these guys that looks super gas after that first round, super explosive. He kind of runs at you, Derek Brunson, at times, but it's really his athleticism and raw power that gets it done. But OSP does have, like Krylov, very crafty submissions that are very fluky. They're not high percentage. They will work sometimes, but if they don't, all of a sudden you've given up your back or something of the sort. But OSP has a calf slicer in there. How many 85ers or 205ers with calf slicers? None. It's just him. So, and 3 Von Flue chokes now that he has. I mean, OSP understands the ground enough to put these guys in bad positions. And last time I said against Yushin Okami, there's no way Yushin Okami gets Von Flue choke. He's a good wrestler. And then he got Von Flue choked from OSP. So, you fool me once, you can't fool me again. OSP has been on the decline for a while. I've been trying to fade him for so long. I'm going to keep trying again. I picked Krylov last time, but I think Blachowicz is next level. I think if Blachowicz was in the States, he'd be popping all day. So give me Krylov decision. I'm going to stay away. A lot of people are saying this is a finish fight. I'm thinking Krylov is like, fuck this guy, I'm not going to the ground. And then he just pitter-pats him until it's a decision. That's what I got in this fight. Who do you have and why?
I don't think he's going to be good enough eventually to decide whether or not he goes to the ground. The interesting thing about Nikita Krylov, like when he came back, I was a little worried. You guys know I'm high on Jan, so I didn't ever go against him, but I was just worried for Jan because Krylov is a guy with tons of power. Mm-hmm. He left to go and, get better because he was realizing he wasn't up to what
the
he
UFC
wanted
kicked him
to
out.
be in the UFC. No, I think they asked him to sign a contract and he said no. Like he stepped down. I think
Right.
he's one of the very few guys that was like,
I need to get better.
I need to get better. So he steps down to a lower organization, fights a bunch of, like literally every 2 to 3 months, fights a can. And all that got better was his ego.
Yep.
So he's coming back. I just think OSP is the guy that proves me wrong over and over again. And he just has that he has okay power on his feet. Killer ground game. He's just like a well-rounded 205 dude, the perennial gatekeeper, like a word that I hate to say.
100%.
I just don't think Nikita is up to this level, and it's so crazy because the 205 was kind of a lacking division for a little bit, but it isn't anymore. We got some good 185ers stepping up and some fresh meat, like with the Anthony Smiths and the Owen St. Preux. Owen St. Preux. I don't know. I don't think Nikita Krylov is necessarily one of those dudes, or maybe he needs to switch camps or something. But the Fight Nights global scene we see over and over again tonight.
They feed people cans.
Yeah. So I'm going to stick with what I know here. And it's no offense to Krylov because I know I've seen him fight before. But it's been a while since it's been well. And St. Preux, he'd be a more dangerous guy for Jan Blachowicz. They probably just fought or something.
Yeah, I'm sure they've all fought. This has been incestual division, to say the least, even with this guy who's taking a little break. I feel like a lot of these matchups...
Submission round 3, though. I could move it to round 2, but I think eventually he's not going to be able to stay away. It's like that Dayum Maya. He's just going to headhunt the whole time.
So, on DraftKings, this is going to end up being 8,200 for Nikola Krylov against OSP's 8,000 even on DraftKings. This is the epitome of a coin flip. minus 115, minus 115. The odds makers have this near even. Here at Labby, we have it. A coin flip. Pick with whoever you want.
You have Krylov?
I have Krylov decision.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, I think I'm actually going to expose myself like 20% to either fighter. And that's going to be it. So 40% total, but 20% either guy on my mix-up of cards in there for sure.
I have to look up my Krylov record to see if I've ever been wrong.
Oh, I've been wrong on Krylov a few times. That guy's bit me.
I'm 5.
He lost to Gross Barros, I think. Did he
I'm
not?
5 right, 2 wrong. I went with Jan.
Good call.
I went with Nika, and then he friggin' lost. And then the other 2 times I went with him, he won. But that was back at UFC 201. And was he fighting tomato cans?
I am 5-3 with Krylov.
So take it for what it is. We're both not doing bad with Krylov, so that doesn't help either of you guys. Either of you guys.
Any of the info there.
Doesn't help you.
But that's a fun one either way. Super excited for that one because it's going to be greasy, whatever ends up happening there. At 170 pounds, we have long time fighting. We haven't seen him for a while. Alan Jouban versus Dwight Grant. Grant coming in with a 9-2 record, recently won a month ago over Carl Petrozzoli, TKO. Prior to that, he ended up losing to Zach Otto in also a robbery. Go look at that fight. Zach Otto wrestled him mainly in that fight, but even then, Dwight Grant fought off most of those takedowns. It was that Zach Otto was in his hometown, 100%. So, Dwight Grant, definitely feeling the love here at Labby from Dwight Grant. You know, he got some fans here, spreading the love, but good striker. Okay takedown defense. On the ground, we really haven't seen much. He likes to keep it striking, and it is...
Oh, sorry. I was thinking of Alan Jouban. I was going to be like, he killed Ben Saunders. I was just looking at their record.
He did kill. Was it in Orlando we saw him kill Ben Saunders? That was brutal. It was an elbow to the side of the head that we heard all the way in our nosebleeds. I was plugging my nose and I could hear it. It was brutal. Poor Ben Saunders ended up eating a brutal elbow, but that was a month ago in Orlando. Jouban likes to keep it striking. The model's been on, Karen and the Fighter, or whatever their podcast. He's definitely doing many things outside of just fighting.
Karen and the Fighter?
What is it?
I don't know.
Oh, I think it's...
That's just funny, though. Karen.
I don't think it is.
Karen. Karen!
What's her name? Is it Karen Bryant?
I flushed the drugs down the toilet. You did what, Karen? That's what I always think with that name from Goodfellas.
That's awesome. But Jouban likes to keep it striking. He's a 10th planet purple belt, black belt by now, probably. Probably a black belt by now, but you know he's got those 10th planet ties.
Oh yeah, because him and Ben Saunders were friends.
Yeah. It was strictly professional in there, but Jouban likes to scrap in there. This guy, everyone's like, oh, he's a model, he doesn't like this and that. This guy always has been in a fun fight. Had fight of the year contenders in there for a reason. I mean, tons of brawls. Doesn't worry about getting cut. On the ground, he's serviceable, but Alan Jouban likes to keep it striking. And he likes to get in brawls, and he gets hurt in a lot of brawls. The reason we remember a lot of Jouban's fights is because he's usually getting back up off the ground to land a punch. And 50% of the time he lands it, the other 50% he eats it, and it's night-night for him. So this is action-packed fight, but I feel like Dwight Grant is got a little more power, is a little more precision of a fighter, and if he doesn't have to worry about the takedowns as much, I feel like this is more Grant's fight to lose than Jouban. Jouban is younger than Grant, but I feel like fight-wise, Jouban looks a little more worn to me. He looks like out of his career that I've seen a little longer in the UFC, he's maybe started to slow down a little bit, where I haven't seen a slowdown yet for Grant because I haven't seen as much from him, but what I have seen is he sits back, lets somebody walk right into his left hand, and he shoots it down the pipe hard, but he'll also trap you with some really good Dutch double traps over with the left. So I think Grant actually finishes this round number 3. I'm really excited for this one. I think you could put either guy on it because I think this is an inside the distance, common theme throughout the night. This is must-watch TV, guys. You've been waiting for a good fight night. You had a little break last weekend. You got to go all in this week. There's money to be made. Give me the slide underdog, minus 105. Dwight Grant, finish round number 2.
Wow.
Who do you have in this fight and why?
I actually have Alan Jouban winning a decision here. I just want to be like, oh, he kind of lost, or you said we felt like he lost to Zach Otto.
No, I thought it was a robbery against Zach Otto. I thought Zach Otto robbed it because he was in his hometown. Zach Otto won that fight, and I thought Grant won that fight. He had higher strikes, and I think was only taken down once out of like 7 attempts or something.
That might change. I do know Alan Jouban is just going to stand and bang with him. We aren't going to have to worry about that takedown coming at all. And we also know like Ben Saunders is not hard. It's been a long time since Alan Jouban's fought. He does have other things going on, and we know Dwight Grant's been active in there.
Yep.
That does make me want to switch to him. I had Jouban because I want to stick with what I know here. But when I'm looking at, the Nico price was really brutal.
Yep.
And then the submission to Gunnar Nelson. And then his wins were almost past the length that we like to count. We don't really like to start talking past the 2 years.
Totally.
Because you're a whole new fighter in that amount of time.
Totally. Belio Muhammad, that win.
Gosh, I think you might be right. I'm changing to Grant. I just think he's been in there. That was such a quick knockout. He obviously didn't have to take any of the damage. He's deadly precise. And if you're going to stand and fight with him, Dwight Grant, he's going to hurt you. I think he could finish Jouban as well.
I got round number 2.
Shit.
This entire card has been this way. I could wake up and go the other way, but I'm a little more confident in Grant than a lot of these other close ones I've seen.
Because you're not really worried about the power of Allen.
Correct.
Ben Saunders is glass.
Exactly. That's not kind of what I'm thinking too. But I do like Jouban's clinch. He does what he'll clinch you and throw that elbow from the clinch, and it hurts a lot of people. He hurts a lot of guys in it. He likes to throw a lot of sneaky elbows in there. So, and Jouban's actually a little older at 37 years old to the 34 Grant.
To the age
yep. He's slowing down.
Damn. Yeah, I'm going to go with Grant. I'm almost even wondering, because you're like, well, Alan Jouban's been in the UFC so long. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But Dwight Grant's here now. Give me the body snatcher. I'm going to put KO round 3. I'm going to give Alan Jouban tons of cred, but maybe he's also a smart enough guy to know when he's done. I could see round 2. I don't see it happening in round 1. I think Dwight Grant's going to feel him out to calculate all of the moves. But yeah, I like what you're saying there. Oh, you just switched my mind. But it doesn't feel like I'm going against a rookie at this point. Dwight Grant showed us a lot in there in the time that Alan Jouban hasn't been around.
Very, very true. Very true. Alan Jouban is the slight favorite at minus 120, again at 8,300 against Dwight Grant's minus 105. So you're getting minus money on both guys. Also considered a coin flip.
So apparently nobody else can decide either.
Exactly. Dwight Grant, 7,900 on DraftKings. We both see a finish for Grant, so I don't see how you don't put them. But I think that you can 20% Jouban. I'm going to probably do like 50-60% of Dwight Grant. I actually feel fairly comfortable with him in this spot. That's still a banger, though. That's a brawl of a fight. Must watch UFC. At 205 pounds, we're going to have Eric Anders come in off of a 2-fight losing streak against Khalil Roundtree.
Is he short notice again?
Anders?
Yeah.
I don't think it is. It is 4 months ago that he lost a split decision, which was really controversial against Thuradoa. That one was I feel like there's a bunch of these guys we've had on this card tonight where I'm like, ooh, they got raw deals in these fights.
I feel like Elias, did he get booed in Canada?
Yeah. It was not a fun fight to watch at all whatsoever. But
Eric Anders got frustrated in that fight.
Definitely. The short notice that he did and ended up getting a dirty-ass split decision was against Lyoto Machida on a day in Brazil. He flew down in like a day and a half notice and fought Lyoto Machida to a decision, dirty split. So you got to give Eric Anders, your boy, all sorts of credit there. He is a Twitter fiend as well. I'm always seeing your boy on Twitter. He's always posting stuff. He's got good stuff on there. The 11-3 fighters only beat Tim Williams as of late. He lost to Thiago Santos, TKO.
You know what I just found out? Because I was about to do the yell when you were like, oh, he's always on Twitter. And I was about to do the train all day, Twitter all night. You know, I just found out that was Nick.
But it's not Nick. That's what people say. all day, all night. It's actually Rory McDonald.
Oh, I thought it was Nick Diaz that says train all day.
Joe Rogan by night. Yeah. No, that's Rory. It sounds like the Diaz brothers, and a lot of people believe that.
I even saw the clip of him actually saying it.
Oh, I thought it was an interview
he said it
of Rory McDonald doing
Rory later, but he was like, train, and it's Nick Diaz, not Nate. Nick Diaz, yeah.
I thought it was Rory, and they even talked about it when he was on there.
Yeah,
He's like, I said it.
I don't know. I was about to say it, and I'm like, I was today years old, because that's the new I see everywhere. When I found out Nick Diaz said, train all day, Joe Rogan all day. All day.
All day. Eric Anders likes to point fight. He likes to stay on the outside. Has power. I mean, his biggest attribute is that he was a college player for Auburn. Everybody says it all the time. I mean, he's an athlete in there, but he actually has good head movement, good placement of his shots, and a granite chin. Thiago Santos wasn't able to knock out Anders. It was a corner stoppage. I believe it was a cut, or Anders somehow was just kind of like, I don't want to go in that third round. It was a brutal fight, but Anders does tend to gas. He's one of these guys that when he gets tired, he gets really loosey-goosey. His arms flail around, and that's why I feel like sometimes he gives away fights, is because, not that he's not in it, but he just looks like he's wearing the shots worse, even though he really isn't. He rolls with the punches fairly well. But against Roundtree here, all he's got to really worry about is striking, because Roundtree's not shooting any takedowns. Roundtree on the ground is very bad. Has been proven time and time again. He's gotten better, but his chin's also a little bit susceptible. Roundtree has tons of power, but he's one of these guys that can wake up, eat the wrong thing, and be like, I don't want to fight tonight. And all of a sudden, he's out of there in 30 seconds against freaking, who was his last Walker? Johnny Walker. 4 months ago. He got elbowed into oblivion. He was out cold. I mean, it was the same thing that Joe Ban does. He cupped the head, threw that elbow, ended up going down. It was brutal. I had Roundtree on that. Apparently, I didn't learn my lesson, because I got Roundtree winning TKO round number 3 again. I don't know why.
I'm so surprised.
I know. I don't trust me here. I wouldn't say you guys trust me here. You fool me once, I guess you're going to fool me again. I just think Anders at 31 has been brutalized in there for a while. I know it was a dirty, raw split in there, but if you don't have to worry about the takedown, which I don't think Anders really shoots in there, this stays a striking bout. And striking-wise, the chin of Roundtree scares me, but the actual punching combinations, Roundtree has better punching combinations. So, give me Roundtree TKO round number 3. There is I have to pick someone.
If you're on the fence with it, I don't like that 4 months ago nasty bow that he took from
Talk me out of it. Talk me out of it.
That's it. The only thing I'm saying, and not only the KO that he didn't want to go back in the third round, but I feel like that was a short notice fight as well.
Could have been.
The interesting thing that I think about this fight is that he went down, Eric Anders cut to 185, and he decided he did not like the way his body felt there. And now we're seeing him back up at 205. I almost just made a new lap B-roll. We like the guys that fight up. I'm picking Eric Anders on that. And Khalil Roundtree has knocked out some guys. I have the worst Khalil Roundtree record. I feel like out of his fights, I've picked right like 3 times. I'm going to try Ya Boi. I'm going to go with Ya Boi here. I think this is going to be a boring decision. I have Anders' decision. I think this is going to be 2 sweaty guys laying on each other for the last 5 minutes of the fight.
Out of 7 fights for Khalil Roundtree, I have picked 3 right, 4
Me
wrong.
too.
So, absolutely trash picks on Roundtree. I don't know how much I'm going to end up playing him on DraftKings. Anders is going to end up costing $9,000 on DraftKings.
But Eric Anders wants a fight. He was frustrated with Elias running.
Yep.
He's got to fight. They got a fist fight. We gonna see a fist fight. The first few minutes of the fight it's gonna be a banger.
Oh, definitely agreed.
But I do think it's just gonna I think both guys have okay chins. Is Roundtree known for?
No, Roundtree doesn't have a good chin, is what I'm saying.
That elbow to me was brute. I just don't like that it was so close. Otherwise, I think this would be a stand-in banger. Otherwise, Eric's gonna catch him eventually.
So, on DraftKings, $9,000 for the minus 180 favorite Anders, Ya Boi, against the underdog, plus 155, Khalil Roundtree. I'm going to put Roundtree on like 30-40%, and I'm going to put Anders there. Because, again, how many inside the distance fights do we have tonight? This is another one, is it not? Well, you have decision. You have decision.
Boring decision.
I have an inside the distance bout, but I think, again, fireworks, it could be those first 2 minutes in someone's night. Someone's sleeping.
I have 4 fights that I think are going to go to the distance so far tonight. Or, I'm sorry, 4 that I think are going to be finishes.
Oh. That ain't bad. That's fun.
I'm mad at that. When they're all finishes, I'll be honest with you, it's boring as fuck night. Because you're like
waiting
too much time.
100%.
And it's fine in the beginning of the night. Everyone's hot to trot, drinking. Whoop, whoop. By the end, everyone stopped drinking. You got your water in front of you. You're like eating snacks you're bored of.
Maybe that's how you roll, because there's some hardcore fans out there that are like, no, that's when you start the Jaeger. Quick in the ninth round.
I always am planning for my golden tea Sundays.
Your leisure weekends.
Yeah, I gotta go golfing on Sundays. You guys know.
Always. The morning after is always a little brutal here at Labby, so we try to get ready for that. You know, try to take care of it.
That is true as well. There is the morning after. Your plan B. You gotta have your plan B.
100%. 100%. So, the co-main event, we go an interim belt underway. We have Israel Adesanya coming in with a perfect 16-0 record against the perennial contender Kelvin Gastelum at 185 pounds. Kelvin's coming off of a 2-fight winning streak, being 16-3. The UFC tough standout won his show at 185 pounds, moved down to 170, moved back up, and his last 2, only losing to Weidman in his last 3, last beating Jacare Souza in a split decision. Kelvin comes in with one of the cleanest 1-2s in the game. That straight right to a piston of that jab right to the piston of a left is highlight reel, vintage Kelvin Gastelum. You know his wrestling is on point, even though he doesn't go to it. Out of his last 5 fights, I think there's ever been only 1 takedown that he's even attempted, and it was more than likely a half-ass takedown to throw that left again for Kelvin Gastelum. It's just boxing. Kelvin has big shoulders, really likes to sleep his punches. Some of the best head movement in there. I mean, Kelvin Gastelum has some crisp-ass boxing and good entries and exits.
He's one of the most... age-wise, he is one of the most
tenured fighters.
Like, who he's fought is kind of unbelievable.
He's all top 5 guys forever now, for a long time.
In 2 different weight classes.
Totally. He's one of these guys that has, you're saying Ulap Eru moved up from 170 pounds and has been flourishing at 185 pounds.
Being old man after old man after old man.
Same can be said for both guys a little bit, to an extent, with Israel Adesanya 16-0. He last beat the ghost of Anderson Silva in a 5-rounder in New Zealand or Australia, wherever they were.
Anderson's next fight? Gosh, he has a fight. I'm going to look
Oh, really? What do you even care about? Why? Doesn't even matter. It's like, all right, it's not for a contending spot or anything like that. But other fights Adesanya has, Derek Brunson, 5 months ago, he knocked out. Prior to that, he won a split decision to Vittori and to Brad Tavares. That split decision to Vittori, that wrestling really ended up flustering Adesanya. Really saw his gas tank start to be pushed a little bit. But Adesanya has had a meteoric rise and one of the biggest hype trains in the sport. Everybody's been on him. I mean, a lot of people say that they're creating this interim belt for Israel Adesanya to eventually fight Whitaker once he gets back. And I can totally see that. But if I gotta be honest here, I'm seeing some lines in the sand that are being crossed and I'm like, oh shit, oh damn. What are you saying, Israel Adesanya? He said, I fought 20 fights in a year before when he was a younger man. I mean, he's still 29 years old, but he's saying he's only been in the UFC for a year and this is his 5th fight. Within a year, he's fought. And again, 2 of those fights went to decision. Well, 3 of those fights went to decision, but 1 was a dirty-ass split. And the takedown defense is held up.
He's had 4 fights in a year, because then on the 5th one was a year and a month.
Oh, wow. Ooh, my bad. But, this guy's record-breaking.
It's about to be the 6th fight in 13 months. So every other month almost. Every other month in a week.
You have a training camp.
Every 5 weeks we're watching this
fight. And now you're fighting top guys like Anderson Silva, which regardless if it's the ghost of Anderson Silva, he'll kick you in the goddamn face if you ain't paying attention. So it's something you got to be on for and you got to train for. And Adesanya has started to say, hey, The interviews are starting to weigh on me a little bit, and I've been fighting nonstop. He was talking about taking a break after the Anderson fight for 6 months. And then they're like, hey, do you want an interim belt? And he's like, damn, I can't give that up. They're giving me pay-per-view shares. Like, he just, business-wise,
tuned in.
Exactly. Like, he can't refuse it, because if he turns this down, then they'll say, okay, Gastelum, you're fighting Rockhold for the 80 hour, whatever.
It's so weird, too, because you would think, here's another one of those fights, as we were talking about it earlier,
right,
that Israel is actually the younger guy here, but he isn't. It's just how tenured Kelvin is. Yeah, he's been in it forever and been showing. So, we know that Adesanya on the ground could, or even getting mixed up with takedowns can really fluster his striking game, and that's what Israel Adesanya likes to do. Throws a ton of kicks in there, up the middle, good punches to the body and head, great body attack. There is a bit of holes we're starting to see in Adesanya's game. It is later in the rounds. It is one of those things that he might let 1 or 2 punches through in the entire fight, and for us it doesn't look like a lot, but he realizes it, and now these top guys realize it as well. And we've seen many a times, you mess up for 5 seconds in there, and you have someone like Kelvin Gastelum to land that left hand on you, you're going night-night. And the exact punch that Adesanya's only ever been KO'd once in K1 striking, and it was with that exact left hand that Adesanya fights. I forget, was it Petra something that knocked him out, but it was a left hand either way. He ended up landing it 2 or 3 times on Adesanya. I just feel like there's a weakness off that left side as Adesanya breaks on the exit. Later in fights, he's known to leave that hand down a little bit more, and I think that this is a very game plan heavy fight where Kelvin is going to end up giving up the first 2 or 3 rounds, but he's the type of fighter that gets better as the round goes on. He bobs and weaves. He does slow down, but he still has impeccable fundamentals. I mean, this is such a good fight. I'm actually really surprised as big of a favorite as Adesanya is, because I'm picking another underdog. You're welcome, everybody. Give me Kelvin Gastelum as a huge underdog, plus 185. Woo! Let's go, because I think it's a finish, round number 5. I think that Israel starts to take a break. I think all these months, every 2 months he's at a fight, finally he's like, okay, this guy doesn't stop moving forward, and all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh, that left, boom, and it's night-night. I think we got to finish. I think it's the O's got to go for Adesanya. It's only a matter of time until you get that loss in there. It hasn't not happened to Adesanya. It's the first time I don't have this fight picked yet. I go back and forth. I think Israel has a precision game. I rewatched that fight with Anderson Cooper, and it's a masterclass. Part of the thing with him is he doesn't get hit. He doesn't really take a lot of damage in his fights, and I also can recall, when thinking of a guy that doesn't take a lot of damage, I can recall Kelvin getting frustrated in his fights when he can't land his punches. When somebody has the kind of style that Israel does, where you're constantly swinging out air, I can see it frustrating a guy like Kelvin. That, and God dang, man, Kelvin has had to work to get here. I don't like guys with the double camp back-to-back, that they're like, nope, I'll stay ready and I'll do that. It makes me nervous. Like, they peaked once and now they're right back into training, and we're asking them to peak again at just the right time. The thing, though, that I will say is when I watched Kelvin get off the airplane on the Embedded series, I thought he looked bodied up for the first time in his career. I thought his weight, I like actually the way both guys look at 280 or 185. I don't think either of them have the hard cut. I think both guys has a really nice cut to get to weight.
Have you seen Twitter blowing up with Nasrat Hapkaras, or Baby Gas, as we like to call him here? Have you seen him? No. Oh, people have been like, Gastelum looks bodied up. And he's shredded. Everyone's like, dude, Kelvin looks thick as fuck. It's totally Nasrat. It's so fucking good.
No, so it's like I'm a little worried here. And honestly, when I look at both guys' records, because I was just talking about that, what a weak division the 185 was at one point. And when you kind of look at both their records, their wins are like, or at least, we're going to talk about the wins for the last 2 years or less to make them relevant or not. Souza, man, that guy looks old as fuck.
It was that 3rd round, too.
He looks old as fuck right now. Michael Bisping on
agreed.
Like,
Agreed.
It was Michael Bisping fighting on like a 2-week or 3-week notice after he was just knocked out just to fill a card. The Chris Weidman, and he lost that, and I am anti-Chris Weidman these days. Vitor, shell of himself. And then Tim Kennedy,
Shell of himself.
Shell of himself. So it's like when I look at Kelvin's record, I feel like, oh, you're about to go in against the first young man you've been into the octagon with in 3 years. Like, you're about to go in against another, like, you've been playing around with, like, old lions. And now you're about to go in against another young lion. On the same respect, yeah, I do know that Israel Adesanya fought Anderson Silva, and that's the exact same thing I'm being said. But Derek Brunson's a guy with a few fights left in him. Brad Tavares, that victory to me, that's kind of how I see this fight going.
With that Brad Tavares fight, since we've since found out, Maheta weighed in to be a short notice replacement because Tavares had a broken foot going into that fight, and they let him fight. I found that out recently. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
And Tavares didn't look good that fight. That was one of the few times.
The Vettori split decision was nerve-wracking.
Yes,
to me,
that's
but
what
Vettori is a younger guy too, which I know you kind of can't. He's one of your like least fave, but he is doing better and better each time he gets out there. And gosh, this one's so close to me, and this really, I know Kelvin has all the skill set. I just see him getting frustrated out there, and I actually see him the guy that gasses. I think he's gonna gas out of the two guys. I think this goes the whole thing. I think it's going to be a split decision. I think it's going to be a close fight. It might even be like a close decision. People are going to be mad either way. That's how I picture this fight going.
Yep.
Depending on what you see, depending on if leg kicks count or not. If Kelvin would use his wrestling more, I think that could make it interesting. I just don't.
He doesn't. He doesn't.
It's like saying Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, 100%.
It's the Justin Gaethje rule. So I'm going to go with Israel Adesanya here. This could be the hype train getting me. It really could. I want to give, and I didn't pick it till now because I've gone back and forth, and the stick with what I know would be Kelvin, but I feel like I know enough about Israel now. He's just getting better and better out there. I don't like either guy. At least they're both on the same shit cycle for this
the
fight,
guy that fell out
they
lost.
both peaked at the exact same time last time. So if everything went right,
Right.
they were both on the same fight card. So I do like that.
I do kind of see what you're saying, though. I think that this can look a lot like a sparring match for a lot of the 5 rounds, where all of a sudden people are booing, like, what did we get? But it's because it's high-level stuff
I
they're
think
doing.
Kelvin's going to get close. I think he's
it's
going to
a brawl.
land a few, but
That's
he's going
what
to
I
lose
think.
his power by the time he lands the few. And I think there's going to be sometimes that we think he lands, that when we watch it back again in slow motion, it looks a lot like that Anderson Silva fight. When you watch that back in slow motion, that you're like, damn, he hardly got hit.
Yep.
Like, or he, a very similar guy with that. Max Holloway, a very similar guy, where you watch it back and you're like, oh, he didn't get hit as much as I thought.
So, before we get there to the main event, Adesanya, being a -180 favorite, is going to end up being 9,200 on DraftKings against Kelvin Gastelum's underdog, plus 155, 7,000 on DraftKings. I'm going to be playing Gast here, probably around 50 to 60%. Adesanya, I think he has to get a finish there to pay it off, and I don't necessarily see a finish there. I think Gastelum's chin is, the way we've seen people get him out of there, is submission. I don't think that Adesanya is going to be able to even get there on the ground. We haven't seen it, so it's a decision or Gast for me. So I think the only play here, DraftKings-wise, is pretty much Gast. I don't see that 9-2 paying off.
What's Israel's average points?
89 points on DraftKings is his average.
That's how I see him. I see him like a ninja going out there and just laying out points.
Kelvin's average is 82 for 7,000.
His finishes, though, with old men averaged in. For real. Like, legitimately.
Yeah.
Israel's are all mostly decisions. So he's
Decisions.
getting that many, like...
Strikes.
He obviously doesn't have the power that Kelvin has to worry about, which could really pay off to the advantage of Kelvin Gastelum. But when was the last time he was in there against a guy with tons of power? That Bisping punch? That Bisping one punch?
That was that Bisping punch. That one-eyed Bisping punch.
Yeah. I think Israel is going to be that speed that Kelvin usually has going in there, that speed advantage. I think it's going to be equaled out a little bit. I'm not saying that Israel's going to be faster, but I do think it's going to be a lot different than Kelvin's been in there with for a while. I like this fight. I love it. I really like this fight.
It's a really interesting fight. I'm excited for it. The only one that could possibly make me any more excited.
I'm kind of glad we split on it.
Me too.
And I could actually see myself having Kelvin by game day.
After weigh-ins,
Yeah.
well, after we see what happens. But
I think they're both going to look good at weigh-ins.
Yeah,
too.
I totally agree.
I only saw them both in clothes, but I really love the way they both looked.
such a fun one. Again, only one that's going to get me more hyped throughout the night is the main event. The way we're going to close the show the right way at 155 pounds is a rematch. Number 2, they met years ago, and Dustin Poirier ended up getting the win. Triangle choke against Max Holloway, the current champion at 145 pounds. He's moving up. This is for the interim belt as well? Is this for the 55 interim belt or not?
It is for interim belt. You're right.
It is the interim belt, but this is just
interim lightweight championship. Yep, you're right.
both of these guys have had such studded careers on their way, only losing. Max hasn't lost. He's on a 13-fight winning streak. Poirier is lost a couple in there to Michael Johnson and since, but he's on a 5 or 8 fight winning streak right now against Miller. But as of late, he's had 3 in a row against Anthony Pettis for Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and he just recently ended up knocking out Eddie Alvarez 8 months ago. Dustin Poirier comes in as a southpaw, super heavy-handed. I mean, this is a Louisiana boy who's been at American Top Team for a while. Amazing footwork. This is one of these guys that has 5 and 7 punch combinations.
I thought you was at Rufus Sport, but really I was just thinking of that.
Pettis.
I still get the mix.
But Poirier, I mean, perennial top 5 contender at 45 or 55. He's moving up as well. He was a 45er for a while, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, both of these guys have grown so much since their first bout, but this southpaw hits with force. Dustin Poirier has been on documentaries from back in the day. You can see it in a lot of his fights. That left hand just naturally, you're born with power, and Dustin Poirier is one of these guys. He's broken multiple jaws in the UFC and out of. He's been sued in his life multiple times for getting in kid street fights and just he hits people with that left and it changes their minds. Max Holloway said the same thing. He's like, dude, that guy hits hard. I mean, that's a lot of people say that's how that triangle choke was set up, but both of these guys have since, been working on their game all the way around. Both of them are, what are they? Jack of all trades, masters of many trades at that. Like, they are proficient everywhere. On the ground, I am going to give it a bit more to Max Holloway, but
really?
I don't even know how much I really can because he lost submission. But as of late,
To Dustin Poirier.
Exactly. But I do think that Max Holloway has shown that his ground game, even the limited stuff we've seen, he's really improved his top game where he's like, oh, he's not just getting readily sweeped anymore. Mm-hmm. Now he's like, oh, I know to back up and win with my striking, but Poirier's just as good. I mean, his exit on his entries, and he moves in almost Gastelum-ish in there when he moves fast in and out of the pocket. Poirier can do that at times, but also switch it up, switch his punches. Head movement on point for days. This is such a profile fight. There's so many angles to look at it. It's just the traps that both of these guys set up, unreal. Their cardio's unreal. Max Holloway, the fight IQ's next level. We've seen it nonstop. Also throws 5, 6, 10, 15 punch combinations.
Unreal.
Slows down, but both of these guys slow down, but what do you expect? They're throwing 300 points. Go
Max
ahead.
Holloway doesn't
slow
down.
Gets better.
His numbers actually go up every round.
True.
Which Dustin's the exact opposite happens. That the last round, even their last fourth round fight, they only judged him up to there. But he actually goes down where the last round might have 13 punches. And Max Holloway, his last round versus Brian Ortega, 138 punches. He gets more tuned in as the fight goes on.
Yes.
Where Dustin's a guy that comes on so hungry and so fast.
But he can get you out of there, too. And so fast. In a heartbeat, he can land that punch. Ask Justin Gaethje. That's a feat in itself. And it's rightfully so. These are the 1 and 2 guys in the division right now. I don't care what weight class. Have them go to 70. I'm going to watch this fight. This is just
1 and 2
top
guy, you
level.
think Max Holloway walks in being top?
Oh, at 70? No.
No, at 155. You think he walks?
I think he walks in his top 5.
Over top 5.
Top 5.
You said 1 and 2 guys in the division.
Oh, okay. In the 45 division, I guess in the lightweights top 5, and at 70
Because
top
that's
10.
why Tony didn't take it. He was like, I'm sorry, Camp. It's just not the fight yet we deserve.
It's a top 5 fight, though. And Tony's a top 5 guy.
Yeah, but he was just wanting no top 1 or 2 guys.
Yeah. But does this make them the top 1 and 2? Because it's the interim belt.
Well,
so technically, right?
You're right.
It does.
For sure right. But
So.
you were saying it's easily the top 1 and 2. I was just asking if you agreed with the assessment that
You're
Max
right.
got to walk in at this.
What have you done for me lately? And unfortunately, Tony is still getting better, and he still just has so many other issues.
I agree with you. I was staring at it. I agree with you. I was more questioning than like being. I agree with you full-heartedly. Like Tony, it's like I love you, dude, but him and Han, it's not.
And then you don't take a fight.
Yeah, you know what gets you a money fight? Just another fight. It's just like keep fighting, stay fresh in everyone's mind.
That's always a money fight.
I think this will be well, you know what? They never have to. I found out this too. So you know the ESPN deal with the pay-per-views, they guarantee the UFC 500,000 buys on every pay-per-view.
Wow.
That was the whole deal of them.
Interesting.
The pay-per-view.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting.
Wow,
so
wow.
I was wondering how many fights we're going to see. Like, okay, we see John Jones, which we know he does over 5. We know Conor McGregor does over 5. We know Ronda and Brock do over 5. No one else really does.
Yeah, nobody.
So it's a pretty smart deal on the UFC, but I don't know if we'll ever get to know those numbers again, is the other.
Oh, interesting if they choose to keep them closed. They are closed network.
Yeah, I love that. This fight is crazy. This to me is like, I can't, if I were to think in my UFC watching career, like top 20 biggest fights of all time, top 10 biggest fights of all time, this is everything. I just can't even imagine how this goes awry.
Totally.
I don't understand. I
It's
don't
not
see
boring.
A quick finish. This is no quick finish.
And it's not boring either way.
Either way you cut it. There's no way it's boring. Dustin Poirier, the way he handles the first 10 minutes of the fight seems to be the way that Max Holloway handles the next 10 minutes of the fight. So it's like 20 minutes guaranteed, and then we got 25. But we got 20 minutes guaranteed. I feel like a drama.
Who's the better leg kicker out of these two? I want to say Poirier goes to that calf a bit more.
I
think that can play a role.
I agree with you. I think I'd give the kicks to Poirier there.
So I think that might play a role just to go in that way a little bit.
The way I don't see that, though, is Max is one of the few guys that you are not getting anything off of him without paying for it.
Oh, yeah.
Like you were saying, 15 punch combination.
You throw a kick at Max, he hits you with 3 in a heartbeat. For sure. But I feel like the line here is totally off. It's unreal to me. I am going a decision, Max Holloway. I do agree he does get better as it goes on, especially as other guys start to wear down. Out of these two as well, Poirier has been talking about, and I think this is rightfully so, that look at the fight they had a good 2.5, 3 years ago compared to now. Max Holloway has grown into his body a lot more because he was a 23-year-old kid.
He was a kid before.
Where Poirier, a couple years older, has stayed more of his same size. So I do think it's a different body size in there. I do think that also could play a role for Max. But the minus 225 favorite, that's too steep. Poirier is too dangerous in too many levels to be that big of a favorite. I am siding with Holloway decision, but 9,100 on DraftKings, that's steep. I think that you can even stack these type of a fight. I think both of these guys throw so much that you can stack these guys 5 rounds, and it has a good chance of going to a decision.
I kind of agree with you there, too. The only way to afford Holloway is get Dustin. Well, who's going to get more than that for cost?
For 7-1?
He's going to lay so many... He comes out there in the first 2 minutes of the fight and is just like... He's
so
just like
fun.
a gunny. I just picture him like on top of a swivel gun. Just like laying out tons of shots. I see him having the kicks. I see him having the better ground. Max just has great takedown defense.
Agreed.
I love that Max is going up in weight here. I think everybody loves that across the board. Get him comfortable. I think he's going to have the speed advantage, which is something that Dustin's been... He's another guy that's kind of been fighting old guys. He's kind of like a Kelvin.
Yes.
Super tons of power, but He's been finishing out...
Alvarez, which we just
Justin Gaethje, I love, but... I also, something about that fight, I feel like it was like 4 months off of a different brutal fight that Justin Gaethje was just in.
Yes.
Like, it was too close to a different war that Justin had. I don't feel like we liked that for Justin going into it. It was just too close. Eddie Alvarez, and then some people, he was kind of like he was beating Eddie, and then some people feel like Eddie took over the fight, and then the illegal knee happened, so they had to run it back, which kind of unnecessarily for some people had to run it back, but then he fixed all of his adjustments. And then Anthony Pettis with the rib injury.
But he was piecing him up before that. I mean, Pettis wasn't...
Anthony Pettis, I'm like,
yeah.
But then he just goes...
Thompson. Exactly.
The worst out of anything, when I look at the both guy, the last 2 years of fights, Jim Miller, the win decision majority against Jim Miller for me, for Dustin Poirier, that's like it's a weak spot in the win of both guys.
I totally agree with that.
When I look at, you know what, I just see this going very similar to Jose Aldo versus Max Holloway in so many ways. I think he's going to come out strong and just fade out as the fight goes on, and as Max turns it up, the exhaustion takes over, and that's when he cuts you by 1,000 cuts, and eventually you're just not swinging back. That's really, it's not that Max is going to KO you clean like Pettis did to Wonder Boy. It's because eventually you're just shelling up and not swinging back, and the ref has to call it.
Yep.
That's kind of how I see this finishing. I think this is going to be a bloody, nasty, gnarly, amazing display of artistic beauty. I love Max Holloway. I love Dustin Poirier. I love both these guys, and I love your stacking idea. I think this is... I just don't see you going wrong with putting either guy on a card.
I totally agree. I think that you got to play either one of these guys, if not both of them.
I think Max Holloway actually has the potential to being one of those like Joanna numbers, and I call them like those where they get like over 120, over
130.
Yeah, I can see that.
I agree
for Holloway over Poirier, but I see Poirier for his as
85,
cheap as he is.
85 points easy.
Yeah, it's a comfortably. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
Totally agree with that. So remember to like and subscribe across all facets. We'll be back with the morning and after because it's going to be a heavy one. Remember to drink that water. Remember to like and party.
You got to drink that water because we're going to Hotlanta, baby.
Woo!
Love you.
Let's go to the beat.
Thanks for listening to Lat B. For all things Lesbo and the Bean, head over to lesboandthebean.com or follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.